Before he was a billionaire, he was captured in a cave with exactly one job: build the people holding him a weapon. He built himself a power source instead. That single decision is the entire Machiavelli method for building wealth. 5 principles, pulled from a comic book cave. Running on 500 years of political philosophy, most people have never actually read. Forget the suit. Forget the flying, the money, the mansion. None of that came first. What came first was a man with scraps of metal and no audience, building something nobody asked for. Machiavelli had a name for the kind of strength this man was building. Virtù, not virtue. Not morality, just raw self-made capability. The skill and resourcefulness you build with your own hands that nobody can hand you and nobody can take back. Everything else, luck, connections, timing, he called fortuna. And fortuna, he warned, is a river that floods without asking permission. Straight up, the cave is fortuna. What gets built inside it is virtù. 5 principles, all built on that one line. Comment reactor if you're ready to find out what you'd actually build the day the thing currently keeping you safe disappears. I want to know how many of us are already quietly thinking about it. Here's why this story works on you, and it's not the special effects. Most people watching this are already in some version of that cave. Not literally, but you're already leaning on something you didn't build and don't fully control for your survival. A paycheck, a title, a system that could disappear in a meeting you weren't invited to. Psychologists have a term for the fear underneath that, an external locus of control. The sense that the forces controlling your outcomes live outside of you. Stark felt it compressed into one night in one cave. Most people feel it stretched across 30 years, which makes it easier to ignore and somehow more corrosive at the same time. So why doesn't everyone build their own power source the second they feel that fear? Because comfort is patient in a way captivity never is. There's no cave wall closing in on your retirement account, no visible deadline, just a slow threat, and slow threats almost never produce the urgency fast ones do, even when the eventual damage is worse. Call it normalcy bias if you want the clinical term. The brain assumes tomorrow will resemble today, right up until the year it doesn't. There's a name for the actual split in this story: the captive mindset versus the builder mindset. The captive mindset waits for rescue, for permission, for someone else's plan to work out on its own. The builder mindset uses whatever is already in the room, however little that is, and starts building the thing that makes rescue unnecessary. Same split Machiavelli built his whole philosophy on. You don't get much say over fortuna. You get almost total say over your virtù, full stop. Every principle coming up is that one idea, flexed 5 different ways. Here's the sequence, stripped to what matters, and worth saying up front. What follows is my reading of the story. Not a documentary. A wealthy engineer gets captured during a weapons demonstration gone wrong. Shrapnel driven toward his heart, kept alive by a car battery wired to his chest. His captors want one thing, the weapon he's famous for. Building it would be faster, probably safer, short-term. Instead, in secret, using scraps most people would have thrown away. He builds something nobody asked for. A small power source, strong enough to keep him alive. And eventually strong enough to run a suit of armor he designs himself without asking anyone's permission to try. He doesn't get rescued. He gets out by becoming something his captors never planned for. And when he's finally home, he doesn't quietly return to business as usual. He ends up owning what he built, publicly, in his own name, with no company or committee standing between him and it. Captivity, secret construction, quiet escape, public ownership. Machiavelli never had a suit of armor to illustrate the point. but he'd recognize every beat. 1500 years before Machiavelli, the Stoics were already saying a version of this. You don't choose what happens to you, only what you build because of it. Stark didn't choose the cave. He chose the reactor. Machiavelli just adds the part the Stoics left out. Once it's built, the real test is whether you keep it or hand it off to whoever offers to babysit the responsibility for you. Comment dichotomy. If you've been spending more energy resenting your circumstances than actually building something inside them. 5 principles pulled from that arc. The 5th is the one that decides whether the other 4 make you wealthy or just make you very good at building things someone else ends up owning. Principle 1. Build your own power source before you build anything else. The first thing built in that cave wasn't a weapon, wasn't armor. It was one small device with one job. Keep him alive without depending on anyone else in the room. Everything after only became possible once that piece existed. Machiavelli called this out directly, just in political terms. A prince who rises on his own arms and ability is way more secure than one who rises on fortune or somebody else's army. Because borrowed strength is still borrowed. It answers to whoever lent it, and it gets pulled the second it's inconvenient for them to keep lending it. The wealth-building version is exact. Before you chase a bigger title or a bigger lifestyle, build the one asset that keeps you financially alive, regardless of what anyone else in the room decides. An emergency fund untouched by anyone's approval. A skill that's actually yours, the kind you could walk into a room with nothing else and still get paid for. At your own arms. Most people build the flashy suit first, the title, the lifestyle, with nothing underneath keeping the lights on if it's ever taken away. Build the reactor first. The suit can wait. It always can. Principle 2, build in the cave, reveal in public. Nobody watched Mark I get built. Nobody watched the dozen failed versions before it. The building happened entirely in private under real pressure, with no audience to interrupt it. Machiavelli's advice here is almost the same move. Word for word, a prince gets judged by how things turn out, not by the process behind it. So you get seen once the result can stand on its own 2 feet. Show up too early, and you're just broadcasting exactly where you're weak, right when everybody's watching. Most people do the opposite. They announce the plan before they've built anything, because announcing feels like progress and gets a reaction. Actual building doesn't provide yet. Build first. Post later. Let the result do the announcing for you. Principle 3, and this is the one almost nobody catches on a first watch. The exact thing that was supposed to kill him became the thing that powered him. The shrapnel was never removed. The device wasn't built to fix the wound. It was built to work around it permanently, turning an active threat into a power source. He didn't wait to be healed before he started building. He built with the wound as raw material. Machiavelli's take on this is almost eerie in how well it lines up. Rulers forged by hardship and necessity are harder to knock down than rulers handed an easy ride. Because necessity builds a kind of skill comfort just never demands. Most people wait for the weakness to resolve first. Wait until the debt's cleared, the job feels secure, the anxiety lifts on its own. The people who actually build lasting wealth are disproportionately the ones who started building with the exact constraint everyone else was waiting to escape. Quick honesty break. Somewhere out there is a Mark I version of your actual idea, unfinished. Because it wasn't impressive enough to show anyone yet. Good, it's not supposed to be. Nobody showed up to watch the first one either. Principle 4, iterate until it's actually good, not until it's good enough to post. Mark I barely flew. Mark II nearly killed him. It took version after version, refined entirely out of view, before anything reliable existed. Everyone eventually saw the result and assumed it arrived that way. This is where Machiavelli would say most people quietly lose. Not because the idea was bad, but because they confuse being seen with being finished, and put an unfinished version in front of an audience with zero patience for unfinished things. Build your early ugly versions somewhere nobody's watching. The polished version is the only one that ever needed an audience. Here's the uncomfortable question worth sitting with. If you had to show someone your actual current Mark I right now, not the plan in your head, the real unfinished thing, and would you? Most people can't honestly say yes. That gap is usually the exact thing keeping the idea stuck at Mark I indefinitely. 4 down, 1 left, and this is the one that decides whether everything you just built ends up belonging to you, or ends up belonging to whoever offers to help you manage it later. Principle 5, the one that decides whether the other 4 ever actually make you wealthy. Own what you built. Refuse to hand it over. However you read the politics of what happens once the tech gets noticed. The lesson strips down to one line. Bigger, more powerful players show up offering to take the responsibility off your hands. And every single offer sounds reasonable in the moment. That's Machiavelli's sharpest warning. Full stop. And it was never really about governments. It's about anyone who offers to protect what you built by quietly taking control of it. His actual claim was blunt. A ruler who depends on someone more powerful for his own security has already lost the thing that made him a ruler in the first place. In the story, the answer is no. Publicly, without hedging. Not a company holding the rights. Not a committee managing the asset on his behalf. Ownership stays exactly where the risk always was, with the person who built it. This is the principle that separates people who build valuable things from people who actually get wealthy from having built them. Wealth doesn't accumulate in the hands of the person who built the thing. It accumulates in the hands of the person who kept it. Picture the other side of Principle 5 specifically. Not the suit, not the headline, the quiet part. Waking up years from now owning outright the thing you built, answering to no one about it, with a power source running in the background nobody can vote to take away. That's not a movie ending. That's just what ownership kept long enough turns into. Some of you are thinking, nice story, but I'm not a genius billionaire with a private workshop. Fair. Here's the honest answer. The workshop was never the point, the decision was. A power source can be a savings account. A cave can be a spare hour after work, with the phone in another room. An iteration can happen with nothing but a notebook and enough patience to be bad at something in private first. Locus of control isn't about resources. It's about where you decide the authorship of your outcome actually sits. 5 principles. One through line, the same line Machiavelli and the Stoics both landed on from opposite directions. You don't control fortuna. You only ever control virtù. Build your power source first. Build in private. Use the wound instead of waiting for it to heal. Iterate until it's actually good. And once it's worth something, own it outright. And refuse to trade it for someone else's version of safety. None of it requires a fortune to start. It requires exactly what that cave had. Scraps, time, and a decision nobody else can make for you. So, what's the thing currently keeping you safe that could disappear tomorrow? If you already know what your reactor needs to be, comment reactor and tell me what you're building. I read everyone. And if someone in your life is still waiting on a rescue that was never actually coming, send them this video. I'll see you in the next one.